The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to our FBN webinar on best practices in developing leaders. My name is Andrew Kite. I'm the President and CEO of FBN, and I'm joined here this afternoon by Jennifer Muntz, our Director of Member Engagement. So we're going to spend an hour or so talking about best practices in developing leaders. But before we do, if I can figure out how to work the slides, I want to just give you a quick reminder about our leadership forum. So if you want to go deeper into any of these topics, please register for our leadership forum down in Miami. We're going to go into deeper into all these issues. We're going to have Mark Inglesian, who's a former global talent leader for Amazon.com and a global leader of HR for Walgreens. He's going to be talking about leadership development, developing a pipeline within your family and your business. And we'll also be delving into family topics of leadership in terms of the role that in-laws can play, so on and so forth. If you'd like more information, please visit our website. With that, I'll hand it over to Jennifer, who's going to get us started.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So real quick, I just want to review the functionality of the control panel. So that's the rectangular object located in the upper right-hand side of your screen. So to minimize or maximize that panel, you simply click on the orange button with white arrow. On the panel also gives you an opportunity to mute or unmute your lines. As we start here, everybody is muted. When we get to the Q&A section, or even before, you can chat us a question in the questions box. So feel free to do that, and we'd be happy to answer your questions along the way or at the end. And so the next thing I wanted to cover is the Fbn Code. So we review this at the beginning of every webinar and every conference and workshop, just so we're all on the same page. So the first thing is trust and openness. So this network is founded on principles of open communication and trust. We like to actively participate and have our members participate. We think this is a vital ingredient that makes our network so valuable. Confidentiality. Members are committed to sharing experiences and insights in an atmosphere of confidentiality. So just like Vegas, what happens here stays here. And then we have respect and professionalism and non-solicitation. So the network is not a place where we sell products or services to one another, but it's really a forum to learn from each other, different ideas, experiences, and information. And so with that, I'll turn it right back over to Andrew.
Great. So on our webinar today, we're going to talk about leadership, and we're going to talk more than just about the leadership of the business, because as we'll learn, there's both family and business leadership, and we need to cultivate leadership on both sides of the fence. We're going to talk about some of the faces of leadership in the family business, the things that leaders need to have, and we're going to look at a few different models of leadership development and explore some best practices. And at the end, we're going to give you some case studies and perhaps some archetypes of family business leaders that are modeled on actual leaders from our member families. So with that, I'll start with just an operational definition of leadership to get us started. And there are a lot of definitions out there, but we're just going to use this one to help give us guidance and focus. But leadership is really the ability to inspire others toward the achievement of a vision or a set of goals. So in family businesses, especially around talking about succession planning, we often think about this in relation to the CEO. And we also get caught in this idea that leaders are born and not made. So there's this idea that you have the born leader who is that mythical kind of person who can inspire everybody and that you're born with it. And I love this quote from Warren Bennis, which is the most dangerous leadership myth is that leaders are born and that there's a genetic factor to leadership. You know, leaders are made rather than born. So we all have talents and skill sets that we can use to provide leadership, as long as we don't get caught in a very narrow definition of what leadership is. Especially in family businesses, we get caught in this idea that we have to lead the way those before us have led, and that the leadership that got us to where we are today will be the leadership that gets us to the next level. And the reality is we know that change is happening so quickly in our world today that the leadership that got us to where we are today may not be the same type of leadership that we need to get to the next level. We also get caught in the thought that there's only one path to success, that I have to repeat the leadership style of the person that went before me. In one of my research projects, I talked with Bill Wrigley, and Bill talked about, the first 5 or 10 years of his career, he was trying to repeat what his father did, and he finally realized that he had different skill sets and gifts, and he needed to lead in a way that was authentic to who he was. That's moving beyond that there's only one path to success, and we can't live up to those who went before. We need to write a path that's based on our own leadership skills and the needs of the future, not necessarily just those that went before. Another important distinction here to make is that there's a difference between leadership and management. You manage things, you lead people. So in order to drive that idea home, we need to think about what's that vision for where we're trying to go and what we're trying to accomplish. And we need to have that vision to drive people towards our goals and objectives. So as I talked about before, we get caught in this idea that succession planning will get us to successful transition. And that's largely based on the idea that we have to pick the next CEO, and that's our biggest challenge. But what we know from research is that succession planning doesn't necessarily lead to successful transitions because of that narrow focus on just the CEO. The reality is our families are going through transition all the time, every day, in different ways. Family members are being born, family members are passing away, children are growing up, they're becoming adults, they're taking on new leadership responsibilities. Our families are always in transition. So just thinking about leadership from the context of who's the next CEO is very limiting. So we need to think broader when we think about leadership in the family business, to think about what type of leadership do we need in the family? What type of leadership do we need in the business? So the family council leader might look a lot different than the CEO of the business, and each will bring unique talents, and in fact, maybe this person who's qualified to be the CEO would not have the same skill sets that we need to run the family council or the family meetings. And then we have the quiet leaders behind the scenes that can be the sounding board for people, give people advice and direction and wisdom and mentorship. So there's a lot of different ways you can express leadership. But it all comes down to what we've studied from families that have survived for over 200 years together, is that ownership, unity, and family cohesion is your greatest advantage as a family business. So when we looked at families that had survived for over 200 years, one of the kind of foundational characteristics was that they developed governance and communication that enhanced the sense of unity amongst the ownership group and family cohesion. Now that doesn't mean we always agree about everything at all times, but it means that we are working to create enough of a common sense of goals and objectives that we want to stay together, that we want to work together to find solutions to our issues. And in order to build that sense of ownership, unity, and cohesion, we need more than just a business leader. We need family leaders. We need a leader at the board of directors level. So I want you to think more broadly than just the CEO when we're talking about leadership. But all of that is to build a collective vision for our future of our families and our businesses. So we want to be clear about our values and culture. We want to have a clear mission and vision, and the mission and vision of our family might be different than our operating company and companies. I like to say if the family is unified about why we want to be in business together, then we can choose to enter and exit businesses as it makes strategic sense. But many times family businesses get fused with their operating business and think we have to stay in this specific business for all times. And as we all know, business cycles don't always support staying in that same business for all time. So if we develop agility, leadership agility, and a sense of common purpose as a family, we can choose to make decisions to exit businesses that don't make strategic sense anymore. But if we don't have a sense of unity and cohesion as a family, it's very hard for families to exit businesses when they're failing. So it's why the importance of investment in the family dynamic is very important. Where there is no vision, people perish. So our leadership should be thinking about vision and developing that common sense of vision moving forward. So these are a couple questions that I encourage people to think about when we're talking in the family business context is, what is the legacy that was passed to us, and what is the legacy that we want to leave for the next generation? Because the greater our ability to articulate our vision for the future, the more likely we are to make that happen. So setting up the context for us as a family to say, what do we want our family to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now, creates the opportunity for us to create a family strategy on how to get there. To give you a real-life example from one of our members, this family has 12 family members in the second generation. They're in the upper 30s to 40s in the third generation. And so when you're getting to the fifth generation, that fifth generation is starting to grow. So this family started with, what can we reasonably expect our family to look like 10 years from now? So they did the math in terms of number of family members in each generation, and they saw the graph for the G2 going down, people passing away. They saw G3 going up and plateauing, and G4 and beyond kind of going through the roof. So then they started to ask, so what does our family communication, what does our family governance need to look like if we're going to be 100, 125 people in 10 years? So thinking about that from a vision perspective and starting to look beyond just the problems of today to create a vision for the future is a part of what leadership in the family business entails. And that's not necessarily one person driving that whole equation. Again, our family council leadership, our business leadership can all be a part of that conversation. So we want you to think broader than again, the CEO role. We may need emotional leadership at times. We may need technical leadership at times in financial and estate planning to help people understand those equations. We're going to need board leadership. A lot of our research shows that effective boards are a key to multi-generational success, and leaders at the ownership level. So we want to, again, broaden the scope for leadership. So family leadership. We can exhibit family leadership in the foundation on committees, the family meetings, the family council, being the family chair. At the board of directors, being a board member, being a board chair, serving on committees, and mentoring those who want to become board members or board observers is another great way to exhibit leadership. Of course, we've got the standard business leadership roles in working our way through the pipeline and developing our leadership skills. And of course, emotional leadership. Each of us can show this on a day-to-day basis within our families. If we take on the responsibility of being good communicators, showing empathy, being an example of forgiveness, of listening, of fostering conflict resolution, that's a form as well. And many times in family relationships, we get caught in emotional reactivity. And we want to move beyond that, and we need emotional leadership at times to move through conflicts. And sometimes that's very different than the type of person that may be running the business. So ask yourself, what do our leaders need to inspire others towards the achievement of our vision or a set of goals? And so you can do a matrix of what do we need from our family council leadership? What do we need from each family member in terms of participation? What do we need from our board leadership? Can be very helpful in setting the stage for leaders to contribute. What we've learned is that leaders in a family business really kind of need to embody courage, wisdom, and heart. And so this is coming from research we've done with working with next generation leaders for over 20 years, is that the most effective and successful family business leaders, whether that's the leader of the business, the leader of the family, or the leader at the board, often have to show courage, wisdom, and heart. So courage. The quality of mind enabling one to face danger and hardship resolutely. In any family business, we're going to face difficult times. Even though I'm a professional in this and doing this for 20 years in my own family business, I often have difficulty dealing with some of the conflict and communication challenges with my brothers. So choosing to assume that responsibility, making unpopular decisions or challenging long time standing practices, and having the fortitude to persevere even when there are challenges. That's kind of a characteristic that, again, this isn't something we're necessarily born with, but we can develop courage over time. Wisdom, the ability to discern what's true or right. One of the inherent challenges in a family business is what aspects of tradition do we need to hold on to, and what aspects of tradition do we need to change in order to move forward? And with the pace of change in today's society, that's getting harder and harder because we need to move more quickly. So typically what families are doing is defining the aspects of tradition that we need to hold on to, which are typically our values, our character, kind of how we treat people. And what we change is our business practices, our products, and that we use that to drive innovation. But we always maintain a truth to our principles. Sometimes we need to discern reality from perception, that the emotional conversations in a family sometimes distract us from what we really need to be talking about, and have the wisdom that we have to be continuously learning. Leadership is not something that you do once and you study once and you're at this magic moment. It's something you're developing a practice of leadership development, and you're continually growing and evolving and meeting the challenges of where you are today and where you want to be in the future. Heart. Now, this is probably one of the things that is easy to lose sight of, but we have to have a sense of empathy, sincerity, and compassion in a family business, because there's a lot of emotional reactivity that can show up. And so our leaders have to have a sense of understanding of different people's viewpoints and opinions, and the ability to guide conversations in a way that help us get to where we need to go in terms of our decision making as a family. So a lot of times this is one of the big challenges that many families face, is that we learn a definition of success that is about pleasing our parents and not what's right for the future. So we want to make our parents happy, so we define success in a way about that it makes our parents happy, rather than thinking about what does the family and the business need, both currently and in the future, in order to be successful, to achieve our goals and our strategies. We don't want to necessarily get stuck in a people-pleasing mode, because sometimes we have to make hard decisions. So you have to have your own internal definition of success and how that ties to achieving the family and business vision, which requires a sense of self-confidence. So developing that sense of self-confidence is a part of leadership development. And of course, empathy, the ability to walk in another person's shoes. So people are much more likely to listen to you when they feel listened to themselves. And one of the biggest challenges that I hear when talking to families is that they don't feel listened to. So listening can be one of the greatest opportunities for growth and development in your family business, because when people don't feel heard, they feel marginalized, and they're much more likely to create negative friction in the family. So practicing listening can be a tremendous form of leadership moving forward. So our leadership must affirm shared values. So if we haven't defined common values, we need to define a sense of common values, and then we need to also connect that to behaviors. One of the members of our network has defined 7 core values, and each year they ask people to submit stories of how people have lived the values in their organization. And they gather those stories and they honor people who have lived the values by telling those stories. So not only do you get to recognize people who are living the values, you get a bunch of stories that illustrate what putting these values into action looks like. So affirming shared values is a part of building that ownership, unity, and cohesion that can sustain us across time. And if one of our leaders stands for values that don't connect with the broader values of the group, it'll be hard for them to mobilize people to act as one. And ultimately, in a family business, we want the family to be working so well that we can be focused on the strategic challenges of our organization and not family conflict and the things that separate and divide us. So when families are unified around shared values, our sense of vision and mission, you can create a tremendous energy and pride. And what we know is that if you can generate that positive emotion, you've got a lot more sustenance during down times. There's a family that's in the membership that, I was talking to him, this is as we were going into the economic downturn, and it's a family that was started in the late 1800s. And, I was talking to the 40-year-old general counsel, and I was asking him, how are you guys doing? How are you surviving the downturn? And what he said was, this is fine. We're going to get through it. We made it through the Depression. We made it through 2 world wars, countless recessions. We're going to be fine. But they had so much positive energy that he wasn't letting the challenges of the current day threaten his sense of being connected to his family and the possibilities of the future. He was doing what needed to be done, and that institutional knowledge built over time really enabled him as a leader to keep things moving forward. So another thing that the research that I've been doing shows is that, and I think you're seeing this in some of the literature coming out about the importance of how leaders today are using mindfulness as a practice, is that self-awareness is a key aspect of leadership. So knowing who I am, knowing what my strengths or weaknesses are, and applying that to the leadership challenges ahead is important. So that involves developing a sense of your own emotions, your own definition of what matters most. And the hardest part in a family business is when what you think matters most is different than what your parents and ancestors may have defined as mattering most. Times change, and sometimes we have to look at new ideas and new thinking. So you have to know your strengths and weaknesses. Understand how you react to stress so that you can manage that emotional reactivity that we all have at times to challenges that come down the road. The more we understand our strengths and weaknesses, the more we know how we react under stress, the better we can manage ourselves in moving forward. So what we know is that if you have a stronger sense of self-awareness, you you have a greater capacity to receive negative feedback. That self-confidence allows you to be more resilient in moving the ball forward as a leader. The less likely you'll feel defensive or threatened or overly emotional. A lot of fights in family businesses come from a family member pushing your buttons. A colleague of mine likes to say, your family knows exactly which button to push in you because they installed the button. So the greater your self-awareness, the less likely you are to get triggered or defensive or threatened or emotional when long-standing patterns show up. It increases your ability to conflict in a healthy manner. If I know how I am emotionally reactive in situations, I can do a better job at managing myself and communicating in a healthy way with other family members, which leads to self-confidence and independence. So what I'm going to talk about now is a sense of internal integrity and credibility. So there's a psychological concept called the ideal self and actual self. We all have an ideal sense of who we are and who we want to be in the world, and then we have who our behaviors show us to be. And in leaders, we need somebody who aligns their behaviors with who they want to be. I've worked with leaders in many families who say they want to be a certain type of leadership, but their behaviors don't align with it. They want to be an empowering leader and giving people inspiration to achieve great things, but yet their behaviors don't align with that. So if we have internal integrity, our behaviors line up with who we want to be, which creates belief in yourself. Now we also need external integrity or external credibility, which is we need our reputation to match our perceptions of ourselves. So we are trying to inspire belief in others. I'll give you an example from a family who had a next generation member come into their business, and their family business tradition was you start at a low level of the organization and you work your way up. And their next generation member ordered his own business cards, and when his business cards showed up, they said, Bob Smith, owner. So he saw his credibility as coming from the family name rather than his behaviors. So what he needed to really learn was what are the actions and behaviors that I can take to earn my credibility and not lean on my last name as my source of credibility. So building belief in others is the practice of building external integrity or external credibility. So one thing you can do as a family is sit down and have a conversation about what do we need from our family business leaders in the next 5 or 10 years in order to inspire belief in others, in order to get us to where we need to go as a family and a business. And then, as Jennifer will talk about in a little bit, is how do we develop those characteristics in others. It's great to talk about these things, but then what do we do as a family to support the development of these aspects of leadership that I've been talking about, that emotional intelligence, the communication skills, and certainly the technical skills that you need as well to be successful in different jobs. So with that, I will hand it over to Jennifer, who's going to talk about how do we develop leaders within our organizations. How do we develop these characteristics?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so we're going to switch gears a little bit here. I'm going to discuss some models of leadership development, how to develop competencies, and then I'm going to share a family business case study, and finally we'll end the webinar looking at different roles of family leaders. So first, I just want to say that leadership development is really an incomplete as a standalone system. The design of a leadership development initiative should be grounded in the succession planning and anchored in the family strategy or the organizational strategy, and also have resources in order to execute effectively. So it's important to keep in mind that the purpose of leadership development is not to create programs, but it's about creating and implementing practices and processes within, like mentoring and coaching, for example. I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but I was reading a recent leadership development study, and it cited developing leaders as effective coaches was the single greatest opportunity for improving employee performance. So if we apply this to the family and say developing coaching skills could improve performance in the family council and subsequent committees. Something to think about in terms of what needs most focus in your family. Andrew indicated that listening skills was one of the most important things, and I certainly agree with that, and that is part of coaching as well. So if we look at the next slide, we're going to take a look at family business leadership model. So there are 3 chunks of or areas of education or learning here. Learning about yourself, self-awareness and self-management, as Andrew just spent some time talking about. Learning about the family dynamics, the culture, the history, and then learning about the family business, the history, strategy, the industry, the competition. And then as I see it, relationship management, which is the last arrow there. In my mind, this really overarches all 3 areas because relationship management is important to the self, to the family, and to the business. And the second line here on this model shows actionable things like a 360 assessment and feedback. I think this is one of the most valuable things that you can do to really understand how people perceive you and how you perceive yourself. And when I did it, it was really eye-opening, and I was able to make some changes about the way I was behaving and the way I was leading a team. So I think that's really important. Also on here are things like genograms and family meetings as a way to learn more about the family and the business. So on the next slide, we have a model of leadership development that was created by researchers from the Center for Creative Leadership. So this is a conceptual framework. It really focuses on the centerpiece there, the developmental experiences. So the idea is that any experience can be made more developmental based on the top 3 things: assessment, challenge, and support. So experiences aren't equally developmental, but if you assess the current state of the individual, of the family, or the business, that really helps to clarify what needs to be learned, improved, or changed. And then creating challenge is really important. You know, in order to get people to stretch and grow, you have to test their current capabilities, which also, you know, increases their self-esteem and perception of themselves. Then you have the support. So in the way of positive reinforcement, again, this builds self-confidence and changes the self, just like Andrew was mentioning. So this process is shaped by the ability and motivation to learn. So someone who's not motivated to learn likely will learn less from an experience than somebody who is interested, able, and motivated. So the question really becomes then, how do you motivate people to learn? And we're not going to answer that here, but just something for you to think about. So this developmental experience here and the ability to motivate and learn and leadership development, all this takes place in an organizational context, whether it's the family or the business. So organizational context, I mean the size, the mission, the strategy, the culture of the environment that you're in. And the researchers who developed this model, they said that since no 2 organizations are alike, that means that there are no 2 leadership development systems that are alike. So you can look at your peer families and do some benchmarking there, but it's important to customize what works well for your family, what's going to work well for your culture and your family members. So on the next slide, I thought it would be good just to bring this down a notch and show a process for developing leaders. So it really starts with understanding the competencies that you need in your business and that you need in your family enterprise. So examples of competencies are a lot of things. It could be fostering teamwork, managing change, empowering others. It could be business acumen, personal credibility, analytical thinking. Then there are competencies that are specific to family leadership, like family first, right? Putting the family, the collective family, above your own self-interests, and understanding, the branch culture or the emotional maturity of a certain generation, for example. These are competencies that are more related to family leadership. So this process here begins with developing a competency model, and that's a set of characteristics that drive behavior that leads to superior performance in an organization or in a family role, for example. It also leads to exceptional leadership in the family office, or business, and you can say that it leads to responsible ownership and stewardship of the family business. So a competency model, it has definitions and behavioral descriptors, and it can even have levels of capability or fitness indicators, like you've learned this at a fundamental level, or you've learned this at a master level. So the model really helps to do a lot of different things. They're used to select people for a committee or a new hire. They're used for development, like this model here. They're also used for management performance, so you can set goals, and then also for succession planning, like path for next-gen development. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about leadership competency models, just let me know. I'd be happy to send some information. So you have this model, and then you go through an evaluation process. And in here we have the 360 assessment and feedback, personality inventories like the Myers-Briggs. There are a lot of other assessments: conflict style, communication style, emotional intelligence. I would say those are pretty popular, in addition to the DISC assessment. I created this little 3x3 matrix on the left-hand side just to show a tool that can be used to plot the performance and potential of an individual, a team of people. So you could use this, for example, to plot out the performance and potential of people who are interested in joining the family council. It could help you make decisions around who to select. It can also be used to prioritize who gets through the leadership development process first, for example. And so the output of this evaluation process becomes the basis for the individual development plan, or IDP. And some of you might be really familiar with these. An IDP is used in business, but you can definitely use it in families. So some families call it a learning plan too. So this basically captures personal and professional goals. It captures competencies that need development. You create an action plan on how you're going to improve on those competencies, and then you have indicators of success. So if I am successful at fostering teamwork, what exactly does that look like? And how do I know that I've mastered that? And then, of course, the development plan has completion dates on it. But the most important thing really is an accountability mechanism. So this could be something as simple as, meeting individually with a family coach or mentor, or it could be reporting back to a family council. And then I also put in here some development opportunities. So development happens, most of the time it happens through experience. It definitely happens in training classes and going to education seminars, but the most effective learning happens when you're doing something. And so I listed some ideas here: job shadowing, internships, and job rotations, which are pretty familiar. CEO talks or pre-call meetings, pre-meeting calls with the family office executive. I worked with one family who, in the family meeting, nobody really spoke up, nobody really talked, and we were wondering why that was. So talking to a couple of those next gen members, we found out that the content, the information was really over their head. They didn't understand the language. They didn't understand you know, what they were supposed to do with this. And so we instituted pre-meeting phone calls with those folks individually so that they had an opportunity to ask dumb questions and not feel like they were intimidated or that they felt stupid about what they didn't know. So, so that was a good little practice that we had there. And sit-ins. So sitting in board meetings, family council meetings, wealth advisor meetings are great ways for people to learn. Joining and leading a committee, really putting your leadership skills to the test, and then attending and speaking at industry events, especially speaking at industry events, especially if you're looking to develop the presentation skills and the confidence about standing up in front of people. So we can go ahead to the next slide here. We are going to talk about some best practices when it comes to leadership development. So the most important thing when launching any initiative is really obtaining engagement and support of those top leaders, those decision makers, those people who have influence over others. So that's important. Defining leadership competencies, well, we know that's important. Aligning with the business and family strategy. So making alignments through the succession plan, through strategy, through your leadership development, all that is really important, and especially aligning with the family strategy. So if the senior generation has been sending messages, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, about not allowing family members to work in the business, let's say, then a leadership development initiative might not be that effective because there are other cultural family issues and family strategy issues that need to be addressed first. So you want to target all levels of leadership. So as Andrew indicated, it's not just about the next CEO of the business, but really developing leaders at all levels in your family. And so, so the primary objective is to develop those leaders that are needed to move the business and the family forward and to achieve the objectives of both the business and the family. So an example of this at the next gen level is to send the cousins to a leadership adventure camp, for example. A lot of families I know do that. So a comprehensive approach to a comprehensive learning approach. So this really just refers to using different methods besides education and training events. So assessments, as we went over, case studies, scenario planning, conference calls, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, coaching. Using an array of different methods really helps to increase the learning. The final thing we have is integrating with talent management. This is really about aligning and integrating with talent. And for families, I see this as being the family council. Since the council is really mostly one of their main functions is leading education and communication, you know, integrating with the family directives, making sure that that things are moving forward in an aligned copacetic way. So next we're going to take a look at this case study I mentioned. So this is a multi-generational family here. They're in the third, fourth, fifth generation. The issues they had was there was an increased growth in the business and family complexity. There was a lot of children and more children on the way. And then there was a decrease in the family employment and family involvement and at the board level. So, so what they wanted to do was create a deeper bench of leaders, have people sort of lined up in a succession plan to take over if something should happen or if somebody wanted to step down. Increase stewardship, really developing that emotional connection to the business. just lost my slide. There we go. And investing in the 5th generation, since that's important when you're trying to keep a family and a family business together for generations to come. So on the next slide, we'll see exactly what they did. So they created a committee structure which gave more opportunities to get involved, to grow, and to build their knowledge and skills through experiences. So they created four committees: an ownership and governance committee, business and financial committee. They developed family philanthropy, and then the 4th one was development and education, I think. So they created an education fund, which I am so excited about. The fund really covers the individual education programs, so MBAs, bachelor's degrees, workshops. It covers family meetings and retreats and reimbursement for childcare. So let's just talk about funding for education and leadership development for just a moment. So this family, what they did was they funded it directly from the company. So 2% off the top went right into this fund, and then they received their dividends. So sometimes the senior generation funds the education initiative directly. Sometimes each branch pays for their own education programs, and sometimes the funds are put into a special education trust. So I get this question all the time: how are things funded? Because it seems like it's a main issue that families run into when they're trying to hire an education consultant, or they're trying to send people to, you know, a private wealth class, for example. So I just wanted to shed some insight there. So so this family was really like forward thinking, you know, and taking away the financial excuses that inhibit family members from wanting to participate, get involved, and learn and grow. So the next thing on this slide here is the individual development plans. So we already went over those, but one thing I wanted to highlight here is that the plan and taking action really resides at the individual level. It's up to you to lead your own learning and development. It's your responsibility. So, you know, in this instance, the family council didn't come around and ask you about your plan. They just sat back and watched what happened, and hoping that you were going to complete it. So they also implemented this task force for conflicts. And so, you know, another way to deal with conflict, to decrease the conflict in the family and increase participation, develop skills, especially if you were asked to join that committee. They also did something interesting with their board. So they revised their board visitation policy, and they created 2 permanent board seats, and they're open to the 2 people who are farthest along on their individual development plans. So these positions have no vote and no voice, just an opportunity to sit in and to learn. And they also instituted board visitation open to all family members. So, so at each board meeting, they could have 2 additional family members as visitors. And finally, for their G5 development plan, they did things like leadership games, ropes courses, factory visits. They did this thing that I thought was interesting, which was progressive internships for 14 years old and over. So for the first year, you would do a 1-week internship, and the 4th year, you would be at the business the entire summer. So I thought that was interesting, just how they exposed kids to the business in a nice building block sort of way. So this family did a really nice job to create space for people to participate, whether you were a spouse or a next-gen family member, and really looking to develop people at all ages and all stages of life. And so it just shows the seriousness about and their intention about creating good stewards and responsible owners. So, so that's it with the case study. Let's move on here. This next set of slides is I'm going to go through fairly quickly. These are just some archetypes of family business enterprise leaders. And, you know, one of the things you'll see is roles in the foundation, in the family office, investments, all sort of the shared assets. I think this is going to be good because it'll reveal different roles and ways that your family members can participate and get involved during or after a leadership development initiative. So let's take a look at that first one. So this family leader here, they're the president of the foundation board. They're a family mentor for next gen observers on the foundation board. They're also a member of the board of directors, chairs the investment committee. She's a mother of 2 G3s and a shareholder. The next one is a family champion. This is the family historian, professional writer, sort of a keeper of the values messaging. Father of 3 G4 teenagers, and looks like in a development phase to become a member of the family council. Here's 2 high potential next gens. So they're both shareholders. One of them has graduated 4 years ago, the other one 6. Looks like they're both observers on the board of directors. One works in the company on a training track, or a fast track probably, and the other one works outside the business and is going to join the family business next year. They're both shareholders, cousins, friends, and team leaders for the Next Gen social event. Here we have a family camp counselor. This is the committee head for the family camp. This also could be the committee head for the education committee. Looks like she's a trustee for the G4 trusts, a shareholder, daughter of the chairman of the board, and a therapist in private practice. The next one here is a family member, PE investor. So mentor to the next gen employees in the business, division manager in the family business, former shareholder in the original operating business. It's a G3 family member and a majority investor in the family next gen startup. Interesting concept. Now we have a quiet shareholder, attends meetings, reads the communications, sends notes to his cousin, is involved with the conservation groups, wants to join the family foundation, and is currently an executive of a nonprofit called Rails and Trails. This guy here, age 46, he's a business leader, so he's the current CFO. He's looks like in line for the CEO position. He's a shareholder. He also is a member of the investment committee, which makes sense. He has a Harvard MBA, president of the Community Hospital Board of Directors. He's an alum of the Board Observer Program, father of 2 G4 teens, and looks like he was on the board of the Family Foundation at one time too. And then we have a 6-month-old. So we have a baby in the family, new baby in the family. Will be a beneficiary of the family trust, and baby New Year at the family holiday party. So those are some ideas and examples of how families take on different roles, different ages and stages of their life, and yeah, I think this was good just to reveal those different roles and wrap it up. So at this point, Andrew, I'm going to turn it back to you and see if there's any questions that came in through the question field.
Sure. There was a question about what avenues you've seen families use for family leadership development. You know, this person was saying that, you know, we've got plenty of paths for business leadership, but what types of educational programs have you seen for family development?
Well, I think some of them are the same, right? I mean, Family members can do an internship right at the business to learn about the business. They can then move into a role on a committee where they're learning about the family council. They're learning about the family culture, the different cultures of the branches, how the committee works together, you know, going through the stages of team development, norming, forming, storming, and performing. So starting off as a committee member, they might take a lead. I worked with one family who one of the spouses was an educator, was a teacher, and she started off in the education committee. She started programs and really led the development of the family camp. And so she led that, and then she then became the committee chair of the education committee. So I think it's really about finding what people are passionate about, what they're interested in, what gets them going, what motivates them, and finding places in the family system, in the family enterprise, whether it's in the foundation or, you know, in the family council, to really let them use and develop those skills to benefit the family. So I don't think that there's any one path really, but it's taking a look at what do I need to develop, where can I develop those skills, and, you know, how do I move myself forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, and another topic that we're actually going to explore in Miami is the concept of leadership agility, leadership versatility. Is that one style of leadership doesn't always work, and so developing leaders, whether it's in the business or in the family, that can apply different leadership styles at different times. You know, when the building's burning down, you don't want to form a committee and you know, debate where we're going. We want a certain type of leadership to get us out of the building. But at other points, we need more collaborative leadership, and sometimes, you know, it takes a leader who can be agile and versatile and kind of shift ways of operating to meet either the personality style of the person that they're working with or the needs of the challenge that we're trying to face. So that's all the questions we have, and we're right about up on time. So thank you all for participating. Hope you all can join us in Miami in October, where, again, Mark Inglesian will be sharing what he's learned in talent development at Amazon and Walgreens. We've got Greg McCann, a well-known speaker in the field, talking about leadership agility and leadership versatility. We've got Debbie Brown from Laird Norton Corporation, who will be talking about evaluating talent at the board and CEO level with a panel that includes Chris Trout from Follett Corporation and a few other folks. And of course, we've got aspects of family leadership, so in-laws as a source of talent, and a few other topics. So hoping you all can be with us there. If you need any more information, please give us a call. But if you would like the slides, we'll distribute the slides from the presentation afterwards, and you can also, as a member, get recordings of this webinar to share with your family. So thank you all for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all in Miami.
Thank you. Have a good day.